Madame Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, présidente de la Commission de l'Union africaine, in absentia, mais ici représentée avec brio par l'ambassadeur Phoebe Potgieter, Madame Patricia Cagliati, ministre de la Condition féminine, de l'enfance, des personnes handicapées et du bien-être social de la République du Malawi, Madame Géraldine Fraser-Moleketi, envoyée spéciale de la Banque africaine de développement sur les questions du genre, Madame Lakshmi Puri, directrice exécutive adjointe de ONU Femmes, Mesdames les ministres, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, la salle est pleine d'émotions. Bienvenue à la réunion ministérielle de la conférence régionale africaine sur l'examen de Pékin plus 20. Et il suffit de dire que votre présence ici aujourd'hui reflète clairement l'engagement que nous avons pris de parvenir à l'égalité des sexes et à l'autonomisation des femmes en Afrique. Cette réunion nous offre également une tribune pour convenir d'une position africaine pour l'examen mondial du programme d'action de Pékin. Je tiens à souligner la coopération établie par la tenue de cette conférence avec la Commission de l'Union africaine et avec ONU Femmes, qui sont nos partenaires pour l'examen de Pékin plus 20. Et je remercie tous les autres fonds, institutions et programmes des Nations Unies pour leur honorable contribution. Je souhaite aussi saluer la présence de ma sœur, Gertrude Mongela, qui a conduit les consultations au niveau régional et international, ayant mené à la conférence de Pékin. Elle est la vraie héroïne de la journée. Considérée comme l'un des cadres normatifs les plus audacieux et les plus progressistes jamais adoptés pour accélérer la promotion des femmes et assurer l'égalité des sexes, le programme d'action de Pékin repose sur de nombreuses contributions émanant notamment du continent, telles que les stratégies prospectives de Nairobi pour la promotion de la femme ou la plateforme d'action de Dakar. Nous ne devons pas perdre de vue que l'égalité des sexes n'est pas un choix, mais un droit humain fondamental que nous devons préserver. Cela exige donc de mener cet examen avec courage. Comme à l'ACA, nous sommes plutôt des économistes, permettez-moi de souligner quelques faits. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa is on an encouraging pathway, translating some of Beijing's promises into actions. Today, more African women are literate than ever before, and more girls are attending school. Bold implementation of policies in some countries have gone a long way in increasing overall school enrollments and reducing gender differences. For instance, in the first year of eliminating school fees for primary education, enrollment in Malawi, and that's why the minister is here, rose by 68% and contributed to bringing in more girls than boys to school. Secondary education gender parity is being achieved in most Southern African countries. The greatest improvements are taking place in this area in West Africa, though. With regards to voice and agency, Africa has witnessed a gradual increase in the proportion of women in decision-making processes, particularly in national parliaments. Rwanda's 64% rate of women participation is a historical achievement. The country is ranked first in the world for this indicator. The example has been set for others to follow, and marked improvements are taking place. Since 2012, 7 African countries have at least 40% representation of female ministers, while 24 countries have between 10 and 20% of their parliamentary seats held by women. Cape Verde has more women ministers than men. Africa is proud of its prominent female leaders, such as Presidents Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and Catherine Samba-Panza, as well as former President Joyce Banda. Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is also an inspiration to women everywhere. In the area of health, we have seen the rate of maternal mortality reduced by 47% from 1990 to 2013. Whilst we have cause to celebrate this significant reduction, the mortality rate remains high. The bottom line is that it is morally unacceptable in this day and age, with the advancement of science and medicine, to lose lives from preventable conditions. Reproductive and social health remains a cause for concern. We need to do more in this front as well. We have seen school life parity grow exponentially. However, only 12 out of 43 countries for which data is available had achieved total gender parity in secondary education enrollment. The gender parity index is higher amongst high-income groups. To address this inequality, there is an urgent need to deal with early marriages, the high cost and poor quality of education, as well as increase the chances and opportunities for women to attain tertiary and higher levels of education. It is only by nurturing the skills of young people, particularly girls, and investing in their education that the continent will be in a position to take advantage of a demographic dividend, a prelude to vastly improved livelihoods. Women still own as little as 25% of the land, despite being the backbone of the agricultural sector. We know too well what ownership of agricultural assets, such as land, increases agricultural outputs, which have a critical impact on food security and self-sufficiency. This is essential in the rural areas where women represent half of the agricultural workforce, and in some countries more than that. FAO have found that closing the gender gap in agricultural inputs alone can lift up 150 million Africans out of hunger. Wage disparities between women and men remain extremely high. In some African countries, women earn less than 60% of what men earn for similar jobs. Disparities also exist when it comes to employment opportunities. For instance, in non-agricultural sector employment, the share of women's employment remains as low as 22% in Africa, compared to 37% in Latin America and the Caribbean, and 36% in East Asia. Despite their pivotal role in the economy, women are still not fully integrated in some of the most productive sectors, such as agribusiness or extractive industries. Our 2014 MDG report highlights that 1% increase in the gender gap in effective labor reduces the output per worker up to 0.49% in African countries. This translates to an annual economic loss exceeding 60 billion. That is as much as external aid. When it comes to the incidence of violence against women, we cannot afford to be defensive. It is a tragedy, and it points to a worrying trend. According to ECA, the incidence of violence against women in some African countries may be up to 5 times that of some developed economies. Equally disturbing is the mounting evidence that violence against women, where reported, may actually be increasing. It is estimated that the reported acts of violence cost between 1% and 12% of GDP. the monthly cost of violence against women is 20 times that of an average medical expenditure for a household. Ladies and gentlemen, over the 20 years since the inception of Beijing Action Platform, the global development context has changed. Africa is emerging as a pivotal region for global economic growth. This had been evidenced by continent's robust growth performance, despite subdued global performance. Our continental growth has averaged about 5% over the last decade. Africa has not been capable of propelling strong transformation of its economic realities. Without jobs, inclusion, and social distribution, the good news are limited. We cannot build dynamic African countries if women and girls, who form the majority of the population, remain marginalized or excluded. Despite some of the strides made with regards to gender equality I just mentioned and on empowerment of women, we still have a long way to go. Africa can and must do better. In this vein, ECA is implementing a continent-wide initiative for gender equality and women's empowerment, as endorsed by the Joint Conference of Ministers of Finance and Economic Development of the African Union and ECA in Abuja this year. It builds on three interlinked components, namely economic empowerment, women's human rights, and the social sector. The focus of interventions will support Africa's structural agenda, particularly women's socioeconomic bargaining power and their participation in structural transformation informed by in-depth research, data, and analysis. It is clear that we have unfinished business that requires us to build on the gains registered over the last 20 years. We have to come up with a more transformative framework that will accelerate the desired change in the lives of women and girls. Investing in women's education, health, property rights, access to and control over financial resources, knowledge and information, all are fundamental. The African Common Position on the post-2015 goals places gender equality squarely as one of the priorities for the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, time for token references on women empowerment and gender equality is over. Nobody should have been given the chance to get away with it in the first place. But unfortunately, it was tolerated for quite a long time. We have a chance to make a real difference. Building on the lot that has been achieved, let us recharge our batteries to continue the fight. Thank you, merci, obrigado, shukran.